So we have three more sections. These are going to be quicker sections because I think we have done now the main big ideas. We have defined what dignity feels like in this experiment of OkCupid. We have given the philosophical definition of dignity, both the protective one, which is ends and not means, and the positive one, the right of accountability. And now we've looked at some good case studies. I think that this elderly person and the Woebot is a very representative case study of how dignity works in the world. And I think we can move a little bit more quickly now through some other questions. One area where people talk about dignity a lot is in the area of artificial intelligence weapons. Now, this is partially science fiction, but again, and every day it's less science fiction and more true. Weapons can be dispatched and with cameras that are trained and to recognize maybe people below as carrying rifles or something. The AI would then recognize that these are people carrying rifles, and so therefore they must be combatants. So therefore they are the enemy. So therefore the AI could shoot a missile at one of these people. Of course, the way this is working now in the real world is, for the most part, those decisions are relayed back to some human being in a control room somewhere who then gives an order to fire or not fire. But we could imagine situations where decisions need to be made very quickly. Let's say people are running across a street and the decision needs to be made, fire now or you will lose the opportunity, right? There's not enough time for the human to make a decision. This is one of the advantages of artificial intelligence, is it can analyze a situation and make a decision just instantly, right? Whereas human beings, they would have to look and study, and by the time, as I say, imagine kind of urban warfare, and enemy combatants are shuffling or running from one building to another. By the time a human being looks at the video and says, yes, that looks to be kind of a rifle, so I guess it's probably a combatant, so I guess I can push the OK to fire the missile. Well, by then, they've already run into the next building and they're safe. So you could imagine a real-world scenario in sort of urban battle where the AI could video and instantly recognize people carrying weapons and then instantly fire a missile, which perhaps could successfully strike before the people find safety in the building. So I'm not sure exactly what the state of the art is now with respect to AI and war, but certainly we're fairly close to the point where we might have autonomous weapons systems actually functioning. And to the degree that's true, this is an area of significant ethical debate. And there are two major arguments that surround this question. The way I'm putting the question here is, are AI weapons dignified? Or more specifically, does dignity ethics, this idea of dignity that we have been discussing, is that support the use of autonomous AI weapons, or does that undercut justification for the use of those weapons? And there are basically two arguments. Two arguments receive the most attention, and these are arguments against. Dignity arguments tend to work because dignity is such a human ethics. Because it's based so much on the value of human existence and the fact that people should be treated as things that have their own purposes, and those purposes must be respected no matter what. And their own ability to take accountability for their own decisions must be respected no matter what, and so on. Because that dignity or that worth of our purposes in our life is so great, it's in general, the theory is very protective against artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence does tend to treat human beings as things, right? It does tend to analyze human beings as other machines, right? And then creates recommendations and so on. So dignity is very much of a protective ethics against machines. There are other ethics we will see which are less protective, but dignity is very protective. And so most times that people use dignity in response to artificial intelligence, most of the time it's in an argument that is against the use of artificial intelligence or for limiting the use of artificial intelligence. And that's true with respect to AI weaponry. So there's the dignity of human life argument against AI weaponry. And the argument here is that we should not use AI weapons because human lives have dignity and have this kind of special dignity quality. And only other human beings should have, or in some sense, may justifiably take the life of a human being not because it's life, because you're taking away dignity too. So that's the general form of the argument, that only someone who has dignity or something, let's say, that has dignity, and maybe only humans have dignity, only something that has dignity can take the life of another thing with dignity. It's almost the idea that dignity is a kind of club that you're in, and if you're in that club, then right, you only have to worry about threats from other people who are dignified. And I think so. That's the broad argument. That having dignity means your life can only be taken by someone else who has dignity. Another way of making that kind of argument, and I think this is a little bit more tangible, is that when you use AI to make decisions about life and death, then life becomes like a video game. Everything becomes counterfeit. It's the same argument as the language argument when you're having exchanges with a robot. It's not that you bring the robot's language up to your level. It's that the robot brings your language down to its level. And the same thing is happening with killing through AI. It's not that you, the human being, brings the AI weapon up to the human level. It's that the AI weapon drops the human life down to the machinic level, right? And killing becomes counterfeit. Killing, when you're killed by an AI, it's like killing in a video. It makes human life like a video game. And it's just like pixels disappear and no one cares, right? Of course, when you die in a video game, you don't care. You just push a button and you go back to life. That's not the way it works in human reality, however. The argument, though, is that the use of AI weaponry, in essence, reduces human life to a video game character. You're being treated as something where death doesn't even matter anymore, where it's just part of a game. It's just pixels disappearing. And in a sense, that's what it is with AI, right? Because the human beings only see what happens through a video feed. So it's only a digital processing feed that allows them to even see what's happening. So in some almost tangible way, it's true that AI weaponry reduces human existence it makes it counterfeit. It makes it like a video game. So that's the argument. That's the dignity of human life argument against AI weaponry. It's the idea that AI weaponry reduces human life to a video game. And then, of course, there's always counter arguments. And the common counter argument against this stance is that really there's no difference between artificial intelligence and bombs that are dropped from airplanes and rifles that allow us to kill one person at a great distance, and landmines, which allow us to kind of put a bomb in the ground and then walk away, and then it kills someone later. We don't know who or how or why. All those three kinds of armaments that we just use commonly, that are unfortunately, part of wars that are happening all the time. All of those kinds of machines also kill people, and they kill people impersonally, right? They kill people without concern for their dignity. It's not really me. Let's say I'm in the Army and I'm an airplane pilot dropping bombs. My bombs are killing people. It's true, but I'm not doing it. I just kind of push the button and drop the bombs and fly back to the base. I don't even know what happened. Is there really, and this is the objection, is there really any difference between that bomber pilot who just presses the button, drops the bombs, and returns to the base, and the AI war tool? Let's say in this case it's like a drone, which the human just pushes the button, the drone goes up and looks for an enemy and just fires and then comes back. Maybe. So two things. The first is, it seems to me there's not a lot of difference there. So if we are going to have bombs, and we do have bombs, and we're going to have landmines, and we do have landmines, then why wouldn't we have AI weaponry? It seems like it's hard to have one without the other. But that doesn't change the fact, someone who really wanted to defend dignity would come back the other way and say, well, okay, the dignity solution is not to stop at AI weaponry, is to say, look, what AI weaponry teaches us is we should not use AI weapons, and we should also not use bombs and not use rifles and landmines, right? And so the debate would look like that. I think and most people agree that there is some substance to the dignity argument against AI weapons, but most people also agree that it's hard to say that artificial intelligence weapons are really unique in the way they operate in war, compared with things like bombs. Right? So that's one argument about AI weaponry. The second argument against AI weaponry is that when a drone like this is released and goes off and kills someone, of course it's going to happen in war that once in a while, or maybe more often than that, the drone will kill the wrong person, will kill a civilian or something, which obviously no one wants. Now, when that happens, at least perhaps when bombs are dropped that way and so on, we can sort of find out who was responsible for that decision. It would probably be the person who gave the initial order to bomb in that specific place, at least if they knew that civilians might be hit, right? And then that person might say something like, look, I knew that some civilians might be killed, but this particular bombing run attacked a weapons factory, so it was a legitimate military target. And so I made the decision, a general could say, to have bombs attack that area to blow up that building. And I made that decision knowing that some civilians might die. So then the general or the commander could say, I'm the one who's accountable for this decision. And it's the right decision. Some civilians died. I don't want that. But my main military objective was to destroy this factory. And that objective had sufficient military importance that it was worth attacking directly, even if it meant that there was some collateral deaths. Now, you can debate that, right? You can say, well, that's not true, or that is true, but there is a clear line of accountability, right? You know who you're debating against, right? You can actually have the debate, right? Should this have been done or should it not have been done? And then later on, you can decide. But the debate itself is really important. The problem with artificial intelligence is if you send a drone up to look for enemies and it fires and shoots and kills someone, but it turns out that was a civilian, it can be really hard to know who is accountable for that. It can be really hard to know who you can debate with, right? If you say, look, this should not have been done, who do you take your complaint to? Do you take it to the soldier, like the soldier pictured here who released the drone? Or do you take it to the person who designed the drone, or the person who designed the artificial intelligence that made the drone's decision? Or do you blame the drone itself? If the drone made a bad decision, do you put the drone in prison? I'm sort of making a joke, but not really. And the whole thing with respect to artificial intelligence, or the explanation or the tracing of accountability with respect to what happens in some cases is extremely difficult. It can be hard to know when an AI is up there making a decision and acting on that. I mean, it can be hard to know who to blame. And if you think, at least purely rationally, there is a case that you could make if the AI kills a civilian, you could make the case that you should take the AI drone and put it in a jail cell. I mean, of course, we would never do that. But in terms of pure rationality, that makes almost as much sense as saying, well, we should punish the soldier who released the drone, or we should punish the person who designed the drone, or we should punish the person who made the AI code that directed the drone. Because these machines, these artificial intelligence machines, are so complicated, and because they tend to make decisions which are, in some sense, independent, right? Because you give the drone directions on how to recognize a foreign combatant, you give the drone then directions to shoot that combatant, but you can't give the drone overly specific directions because every combatant is going to wear slightly different color clothes and hold his or her rifle in a slightly different way and so on. So you do need to program the drone with some flexibility. And in some sense, later on, when we talk about explainability, I will want to modify what I'm going to say now, but right now I will just say, in some sense, the drone does make its own decision, right, about what is a target and about when to fire at that target. It's not just the case that the human give very specific directions. When you see exactly this rifle and exactly this posture, then shoot. No, the human AI coder gives a bunch of different pictures of rifles and says essentially to the drone, again, I want to adjust this later. I'm anthropomorphizing now, but I'm doing that for the sake of this discussion. The directions you give are much more like, if you see something that looks kind of like this, then in that case, you can shoot. I mean, in a sense, then, if the drone makes a mistake, it's the drone's decision that's wrong. So you could reasonably say the drone should be sent to prison, just as you could reasonably say the AI coder could be sent to prison, or the operator of the drone, or the soldier that released the drone into the air, or maybe no one, right? You can also say, this is called the responsibility gap. You can say, look, when you use AI in some situations, no one is responsible because it's just impossible to figure out who really made the decision which triggered the action that killed this innocent civilian. So if that's right, and this is what the argument rests on, if it is right that in the case of AI weaponry, this responsibility gap exists, and we can't tell who is to blame when the drone does something wrong, then the dignity argument is we cannot use the drone because the dignity idea that a human being should always be accountable, there always must be someone accountable for an action. Right? We can't just say it's no one because it's a condescension to ourselves. We, as dignified members of the military, we insist that there be accountability for our own actions because we're not babies. We actively take responsibility for what we do. So whenever we use a weapon, we must only use weapons where we can attribute responsibility for that use. And we insist upon that ourselves as part of our own dignity. And if it happens that AI disallows that kind of responsibility, it has lives lost without accountability, as I put it, well, then maybe the dignity argument is that we should not use that weaponry. Though against this argument, against this dignity argument, there's also the case that, look, AI weapons also save lives because soldiers, instead of sending people in planes with bombs over the enemy and maybe having them be shot down, now when the AI drone is shot down, it's just a machine, so lives are saved. The argument here is, look, AI weapons save human lives, and maybe that's worth more than the loss of the dignity. Or maybe you could even say, look, these human lives that are saved, they have dignity too. So we're willing to give up a little bit of dignity to use these arms, these weapons, these AI weapons, but it's worth it because we get back more dignity for these lives saved in terms of these soldiers that are not put at risk because they don't have to fly a plane over enemy territory and shoot these missiles. So the debate goes on. There's no, as is the case generally with respect to dignity, they are debates that it's very difficult to find an answer that satisfies everyone. And part of that reason is that dignity itself, it's so slippery. It's so hard to grasp exactly what it is and when it isn't. Well, it's not when it is in play. I mean, for Kant, dignity is always in play. It's always part of what's happening. But it's very difficult to isolate the dignity. It's very difficult to take it out and say, here's the dignity part of what is happening. Unlike, let's say, going back to the question of the Woebot, when you talk about biological health, it's relatively easy to abstract that from a situation and say, look, I can measure the health a person has. I can measure whether they have a heartbeat or not. I can measure how much time they spend out of bed and so on. I can measure their health in a concrete way. Dignity, it's very hard to measure. It's very hard to get your hands on exactly where it is in a situation. And because it is so slippery, most debates in dignity look like the ones we saw with the AI chatbot or here with weapons. They're debates where you can kind of go back and forth for a very, very long time. Okay, but that's the debate. Why don't you just take a few minutes and think for yourselves about whether it seems to you that within the realm of the ethics of dignity, AI weapons and their potential responsibility gap, with their potential responsibility gap, whether or not they are justified. Of course, just jumping ahead a little bit, right? You could also say maybe, look, we can only use AI weapons when we can understand exactly who's at fault when they go wrong, the programmer and so on. That would be a solution too.